for 30 years, nobody knew who killed her. Detectives came and went. Evidence sat sealed in cardboard boxes inside a forgotten storage room. Her mother lit a candle every year on the anniversary of her death, staring at a photograph that never aged. Then, a tiny drop of dried blood changed everything. But the truth was even more disturbing than anyone imagined. It was 1993, the kind of year that felt safe in small-town America. In Harlan Creek, Indiana, a quiet community of about 4,000 people, where everybody knew your name and your family, and where the biggest news story that summer was a county fair ribbon. Nobody locked their doors. Nobody had to. Rachel Harmon was 19 years old. She was the kind of person you noticed when she walked into a room. Not because she tried to be, but because her smile was genuine in a way that made people instinctively trust her. She worked part-time at Miller's hardware store on Main Street. She was saving money for her second year at Purdue. She loved country music, terrible horror movies, and her two younger brothers. She was, by every account, one of those people who made the world feel a little warmer just by being in it. On the evening of August 14th, 1993, Rachel finished her shift at Miller's Hardware at 8 p.m. Her co-worker, Diane Marsh, watched her pull on her jacket and wave goodbye. Diane would later tell police that Rachel seemed completely normal, happy even. She mentioned she was going to stop by a bonfire at Riverside Park before heading home. That was the last time anyone could confirm seeing her alive. When Rachel hadn't come home by midnight, her mother Linda began calling around. Nobody at the bonfire remembered seeing her arrive. Her car, a white 1989 Ford Escort, was found the next morning parked along Millers Creek Road, about 2 miles from the park. The door was unlocked. Her purse was on the passenger seat. Her keys were on the ground just outside the driver's door, like she'd gotten out in a hurry, or been taken out. Search teams combed the surrounding woods for 3 days. It was a volunteer firefighter named Tom Garrett who found her on the 4th day, just before sunset, partially concealed beneath a collapsed section of brush and dead leaves near the creek bank. She was approximately half a mile from her car. Rachel Harmon had been strangled. The medical examiner estimated she'd been dead for at least 72 hours. There were no defensive wounds, suggesting she'd been caught off guard or overpowered quickly. There was no sign of sexual assault. Whatever happened to Rachel happened fast, and whoever did it had enough time to conceal her body and walk away without anyone seeing a thing. Harlan Creek Police, aided by the Indiana State Police, launched a full investigation. Detective Ray Calloway took lead on the case. Calloway was 41 years old, experienced, and methodical. He'd worked homicides before, but he later admitted this one got under his skin in a way the others hadn't. The first suspect was Rachel's boyfriend, Tyler Boone. Tyler was 20, a local kid, and when detectives interviewed him, he was nervous, inconsistent with his timeline, and couldn't account for 2 hours on the night Rachel disappeared. He was brought in twice for questioning. For nearly 3 weeks, investigators believed they had their man. But Tyler's inconsistencies turned out to have nothing to do with murder. He'd been secretly meeting someone else that night, something he was terrified to admit in a town this small. Once verified, his alibi was airtight. Back to square one. The second person of interest was a transient named Carl Denny, who'd been seen near Millers Creek Road the weekend Rachel disappeared. Carl had 2 prior arrests in Kentucky for assault. He fit the profile. He had no verifiable alibi. He was brought in, questioned for 6 hours, and ultimately released when a DNA swab came back with no match to the trace evidence recovered from Rachel's clothing. 2 suspects, 0 answers. The trace evidence itself was frustratingly limited. A partial palm print on Rachel's jacket that matched no one in any existing database. A few fiber transfers suggesting contact with a dark wool material, and a small, degraded biological sample collected from her collar. In 1993, the technology to fully process that sample simply didn't exist. It was logged, sealed, and stored. The community was terrified. Mothers drove their daughters to work. Men installed deadbolts on doors that had never needed them. Rumors spread like wildfire about Tyler, about Carl, about a stranger passing through. The fear was thick and formless, because when you don't know who did something like this, the entire world becomes a suspect. And slowly, the leads dried up. Months passed, then years. By 1997, the Harlan Creek investigation had officially gone cold. Detective Calloway still kept Rachel's photograph in a folder on his desk. He'd look at it sometimes before going home and make himself a quiet promise he couldn't keep. He retired in 2004 without ever solving the case. Linda Harmon kept her daughter's bedroom exactly as she'd left it. The Garth Brooks poster, the half-finished crossword on the nightstand, the stack of Purdue course catalogs Rachel had been going through, circling classes she would never take. Every August 14th, Linda would drive to Miller's Creek and leave flowers where they'd found her daughter. For 30 years, nobody joined her except family. The case file sat in a storage room at the Harlan Creek Police Department, inside a cardboard box labeled R. Harmon, 1993, collecting dust beside cold cases that had outlived the detectives who worked them. 30 years. In 2022, the Indiana State Police launched a cold case initiative, partnering with a forensic genetics laboratory to revisit unsolved homicides using modern DNA technology. The methodology was called Investigative Genealogy, the same technique that cracked the Golden State Killer case in 2018 and had since been applied to dozens of similar investigations across the country. The concept is almost science fiction in its capability. Instead of needing an exact DNA match in a criminal database, forensic genealogists upload genetic profiles to public ancestry websites, identify distant relatives of the unknown contributor, sometimes third and fourth cousins, and then work backward through family trees until a specific individual emerges. A detective named Sarah Pruitt, 34 years old, was assigned to Rachel's case as part of the initiative. When she opened that evidence box and read through the original investigative files, she made a note in her report. The original detectives had done everything right with the technology they had. The answer was never in their methods. It was in what time and science hadn't given them yet. The degraded biological sample from Rachel's collar was reprocessed using modern extraction techniques. What had been unusable in 1993 now yielded a partial genetic profile strong enough for genealogical analysis. It was uploaded to GED Match in the spring of 2022, and the matches started coming back. The genealogical tree took 6 weeks to build. Pruitt and her team worked backward through census records, obituaries, public records, and marriage licenses, narrowing a cluster of genetic relatives down to a single family line. The profile belonged to a man. He was in his mid-60s. He had lived in Indiana his entire life. And when Sarah Pruitt ran his name against the original 1993 case file, she felt her breath stop for a moment. His name was Dennis Kowal. Dennis Kowal had been interviewed in 1993, briefly, as a neighbor. He'd known the Harmon family for years. He'd helped Linda hang Christmas lights one winter. He had attended Rachel's memorial service. He'd been seen crying at it, according to a witness statement buried deep in the original file. He had never been a suspect, not once. Because people like Dennis Kowal are invisible to suspicion. They're the ones who mow their lawns on Sunday mornings, wave at the mail carrier, and show up at the vigil holding a candle. They are the people standing right beside the family during their worst moments, present in the grief, untouched by the investigation, completely hidden in plain sight. But the DNA didn't care who Dennis Kowal pretended to be. In November 2022, Dennis Kowal was arrested at his home in Lafayette, Indiana, where he had been living quietly for over 20 years. He answered the door in a bathrobe. When detectives identified themselves, he said nothing for almost 15 seconds. Then he said, "I always figured this day would come." During interrogation, Kowal initially denied everything. His attorney advised him to stop talking, but the DNA evidence was overwhelming. Investigators also discovered that Kowal had quietly moved out of Harlan Creek in 1995, just 2 years after Rachel's murder, without much explanation to the people who had known him. And then, prosecutors found something that made the entire courtroom go completely silent. In 1989, 4 years before Rachel's murder, a 17-year-old girl in a neighboring county had reported being followed and grabbed from behind near a rural road. She had escaped. The attacker had fled into the dark and was never identified. Her description of her attacker matched Dennis Kowal. Rachel Harmon had not been his first attempt. The trial lasted 9 days. Kowal's defense argued the DNA evidence was contaminated, that the genealogical methodology was imprecise, that 30 years of storage had compromised the chain of custody. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty. Murder in the first degree. The courtroom was full. Linda Harmon sat in the front row. When the verdict was read, she pressed both hands over her mouth and closed her eyes. She didn't make a sound for a long moment. And then she exhaled, the long, shaking exhale of someone who had been holding their breath for 30 years. Dennis Kowal was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. He is currently housed at the Wabash Valley Correctional Facility in Carlisle, Indiana. Linda Harmon gave a statement outside the courthouse that was quiet, measured, and devastating in its simplicity. She said she had waited 30 years to hear her daughter's name spoken inside a courtroom in the presence of justice. She said Rachel deserved that. She said she could finally breathe. Rachel's case is now part of a national training module used to teach forensic investigators how investigative genetic genealogy can be applied to degraded samples in cold case homicides. Somewhere in Harlan Creek, Indiana, the flowers are still left on Millers Creek Road every August 14th. Not where I am. For 30 years, Dennis Kowal sat in rooms with the people who loved Rachel Harmon. He watched them grieve. He watched them search. He attended the vigil. He lived his life, quietly, unremarkably, invisibly, while a 19-year-old girl's family fractured under the weight of an answer they could never reach. He thought the past couldn't find him. He was wrong.